And here we are for another session of Off the Grid. I wanted to welcome my next guest. He is a dope MC, a producer, a paranormal researcher, a podcaster, and an author. He is a man of many talents and skills, has a unique sound, and just an amazing ability to take you on a musical journey with the songs that he writes. Wanted to welcome Nomar Slevik, man. Thank you for doing the session with me. How are you? And
I'm
finally meet
good. I know. I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. We've been in each other's atmospheres, but haven't connected before. So this is definitely cool for me too.
Yeah,
Thanks so
yeah. The
much.
honor is mine. And hey, before we go into your work as an author, I wanted to start with music. So I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about just your first exposure to music and what kind of music were your parents bumping back in the day? What do you
Yeah.
remember?
So my first exposure to really like the concept of music and when it really like first captured my attention
Yep.
was actually my aunt. She would come over, and this is, way back in the day, like we're talking 80s. And she would come over and she would play the acoustic guitar for my sister and I. And we would just sit there transfixed. And I'm sure she was singing, some children's songs and probably like some gospel.
Yeah.
That side of my family is definitely religious, and but we didn't care what it was about. We weren't about dissecting the lyrics. It was just the
Yeah.
music had
Sure.
transfixed us. Yeah. And coming from Maine and being from northern Maine at that, my folks were bumping country music. In my opinion, it was cool country music. We're talking Johnny Cash,
Yeah.
Randy Travis, Conway Twitty, Hank Williams, Merle Haggard. So there's a lot of stuff that is still getting bumped today, and stuff that I'll come across on Spotify, or I'll check out, an old time country playlist or something, and bump some Johnny Cash for a little while, or whoever's in that playlist. But that's basically, that part of it right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And at some point, hey man, you're an established musician and you do rap music, and there's got to be a start to it, right? So what was your introduction to rap music then?
Funnily enough, it's Beastie Boys.
Oh, okay.
I was still living in northern Maine, and the only exposure I had to music was my aunt and my
Okay.
parents playing country music constantly.
Yeah.
When Beastie Boys came over the radio, and it was probably Party for You Right, or whatever
Yeah.
that's called, the License to Ill album. When those songs came on the radio, it like blew my mind. I'm like, what? This also exists. This is amazing. And so that led me down a long road of Run DMC, Big Daddy Kane, like all those guys.
Yeah. Hey, and I read in some older interviews that you did that you were a big Ice-T fan at one
Yeah.
point too, as well. And so, do
Yeah.
you still share that same appreciation for him?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely love Ice-T. I mean,
Yeah.
He's changed quite a bit
Yeah.
since,
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Rhyme pays and Power and all those days. But like, I still appreciate his Insta and his Twitter.
Yeah.
Super positive dude,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And even back in the day, he would be on MTV giving an interview or something, but he was always saying stuff about, like teachers should be making more money than, like me, like talking about himself. And
Right. Right.
there was always a lot of positivity. And, I feel he was really genuine with his street stories, if you will.
Yeah.
But you go back to any of that gangster rap stuff, it's tons of misogyny,
Yep.
tons of anti-LGBTQIA,
Yeah.
so it's tough to support that these days,
Right.
those types of
Right.
lyrics these days. But I still got love for Ice-T. I mean, I'm even wearing a Rap a Lot t-shirt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had love for Ghetto Boys back in the day, but I mean, Ghetto Boys is unlistenable at this point, except for maybe Mind Playing Tricks or something. But
Classics, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No. No. And I guess I should have reframed that question. It wasn't in the sense of the messaging
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
being delivered back in the day. But just the art of gangster music, man,
yeah.
was was great.
Yeah.
And you're
I
right,
mean,
man.
like,
I follow Ice-T too as well, man, and I
yeah.
love all the things that he's doing now too. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
very positive.
And people change. And if you're open to changing, I
Yeah,
mean, like people make mistakes. I've made mistakes, and I'm sure
sure.
you have. And if you can grow and learn from them, I mean, that's amazing and
Yeah.
that's awesome. So
No, you're right, man. You took that and
yeah,
transformed, man. So great. But no, you're right, man. Just music in general and what we started with, just a fascinating art and the way to
yeah.
deliver music, man. Very
And
unique.
and colors is like still iconic,
Yeah, there
so
you go. Yeah, and so as I did more research about you, man, just I love your diverse taste in music, man. So and then it sounds like you're still quite like the guy when it comes to music, man. And so,
yeah.
do you have any other specific genres that you like more than hip hop right now that you listen to
Oh,
sometimes?
I wouldn't say more than hip hop. That's
Okay,
always been,
yeah,
the
in the
roots
lead,
of
yeah,
my yeah, yeah,
same.
yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
There's definitely other stuff I
yeah,
appreciate, but if I'm in the car or if I'm riding my bike, around, I go on bike rides every day. I'll pop the headphones in while I'm
yeah,
doing that. And if I'm listening to something, it's either a podcast
yep,
or it's going to be hip hop.
yeah,
Typically, the hip hop I'll listen to now,
yeah. Oh, that's cute.
besides some gangster rap playlist or something,
Yeah,
it'll be like the Id Obelises and Audio
yeah.
Recon and Chesky obviously,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's that whole realm of things. I haven't listened to anything Rhyme Sayers in a while, but
yeah,
they were a go-to back in the day. At least Atmosphere, was a go-to
yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah, no, hey man, that's that's great to know, man. That hey, you're still in there, and you've done something that almost I don't know if I wish I'd done, but you've been good at just like your MC name, man. A lot of people go through many different changes and phases of what they use, and so I imagine Nomar Slevik's your government name, right? Your real name.
It's not.
Oh, it's
And a lot
not. Okay.
yeah,
Oh,
and a
I
lot of
wasn't
people
sure.
yeah, a lot of people
Okay.
are a lot of people are surprised when they hear that. So there might be a lot of people surprised right now. And it's not like
I
it's this
am.
big yeah, it's not like it's this big secret.
Right,
Like
right.
if I'm talking to somebody like like as adults, it's tough making friends, but when someone new does come into your life and they
Okay.
know you or they know me as that name, because that's I also write under
Yeah,
that
your pen
name.
name for your books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, if I'm like becoming close to somebody or we're becoming actual friends or whatever,
Okay.
then I'll let them know, like, hey, just so you know, because they'll continue to call me Nomar, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, like we know each other now.
Yeah, you're right.
This is my real name, and they're like, oh, okay, all right, cool. And I'm like, it's just a pen name, it came from my hip hop days, and
Yeah.
I'm still, and I'm just using that name now still. So
Where did it come from then? Do you mind sharing the origin of the name?
I just made it up one day.
It sounds great, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I just made it up one day. I think I was working on anagrams of lots of different words,
Okay.
and I came up with Slevik first.
Okay.
And I thought
Oh
that was
man.
really cool. So I was playing around with Slevik as a first name, or maybe just Slevik.
Okay.
And I was like, this. I think there's got to be something before, because I like the first and last name, aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Nomar, it just made up. I mean, it's nothing earth shattering, but
Yeah.
I really liked it, and I liked how it looked written for a while. When I started releasing albums as that name, like it
Yeah.
always had to be lowercase. Like I was,
Ah,
like,
dude. It
I
it
really
has
had to
a
do that.
oh man, it just has a great ring to it. And man, I'm actually quite mind blown right now. Like, oh, that's not his real name. I just
Yeah,
assumed, man.
yeah.
Oh, that's crazy, man. And so, what was the moment? So, you got into the Beastie Boys, and so what was the catalyst for you to actually pick up the pen or
Um,
pencils and start writing raps?
yeah, I was in high school,
Okay.
and I think I was a freshman, and I befriended somebody. My high school in my area, like where I went to school,
Yeah.
it's a lot of small communities that are near each other, and
Yeah.
everybody went to the same high school, but we all went to different elementary schools. So when we got to high school,
Yep.
you only knew the kids from your elementary school, and all of a
Sure.
sudden you're stuck in a high school with six or seven other elementary school
Yeah.
community kids. And I became fast friends with this kid that I didn't go to elementary school with. And
Okay.
we had this passion for hip hop, and we loved Cypress Hill, NWA, all that stuff. I
Yeah.
think Ice Cube solo stuff is coming out too. And and so we're really digging on that. And so we would get to, we would do the sleepover thing, and he'd sleep at my place, or I'd go sleep over at his place.
Yeah.
And we we had a funny thing where we liked to uh, make up these little scenarios or stories
Uh-huh.
where these rappers were visiting us, because like MC8 has a really distinct voice, and Be
Yeah.
Real has a really distinct voice,
That's
and
right.
Send Dog in our atmosphere of these stories was just a grunter, or he was just a really big agreeer. Like MC8 would be like Zia, you
Yep.
know,
That's right. Yep.
and Sendog would be like, yo, he couldn't do it because his voice was so much deeper, but he was always just trying to be everybody's hype man. And so from just such a love for the music, we started making up our own raps.
Oh
And of
man.
course, we just had the boombox, and we'd hit record,
Yep.
and we start rapping, and you had another boombox playing behind you, or just a tape deck of some sort, playing the musical, playing the beat, and we would start rapping over it. And we did that for 2 or 3 years,
Okay.
religiously,
Wow.
writing songs and all that stuff. And we were a group for a while. And
Yeah.
but the big thing when I started taking it very seriously
Yeah.
is Walmart, of all places. And I can't remember if this was put on by Walmart, or if it just happened to be, like in their, because they have such a huge parking lot. Like, was it in there? It was just in their parking lot for whatever reason.
Okay.
But there was like a musical showcase,
Ah,
and there would be like a top prize for winners. And without ever performing before, I
yes.
submitted to do a solo song, a solo rap song. And I was making really like basic, fundamental beats just on
Sure.
like a Casio keyboard and stuff. So I had this beat that I made, and I had a whole song that went to it. And everybody at this thing was doing country music or rock music,
Yeah.
because it was like, what, 92, 93, something like that.
Sure.
And I was the only one doing rap music, and I did my song. And I'm sure it was very amateur, but it got a positive response.
Nice.
Maybe just because it was so different. And even some of the rock guys afterwards, we would talk and be like, oh man, I'd love to do some drums for you or something. Or
Oh
I'm like, oh,
man.
that's really cool. Yeah, yeah. But that was like kind of my first foray into like taking it seriously and maybe
Okay.
performing, and like this could be something that maybe I can do.
Yeah.
And it went really well. I didn't win anything, that went to the rock guys. And but it was such a positive experience after being so scared to like get
Yeah.
up on stage. And like
Oh,
I
that's a
think I
great point.
yeah, like I almost puked, or I did puke before I
Yeah.
went on. And so it was terrifying, but I was really proud of myself that I did it. And
Yeah. Hey man,
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
great story, man. Like I was gonna ask you, I assume you were an anomaly in Maine doing hip hop, and I was gonna ask you if the community was quite embracing or welcoming of the music that you did. Sounds like it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sort of. I didn't know how to capitalize on any of that, so it kind of just
yeah,
happened.
sure.
And I did that one weekend. I remember I got recognized at McDonald's like the
Yeah.
following weekend. Like, hey, you were at that thing. Yeah.
That's
So
big
so that
though,
was
man.
fun.
That's a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
deal.
I thought that
Yeah,
was cool because I think I was with my dad, and he
yeah.
was like, "Good for you, buddy." Um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
But
great.
but I like, yeah, I was like, what, 15 or 16. And I didn't know anything about like booking shows or anything, so I just continued to like make beats in my
Yep.
room, and I would rap on it, and I would try to sell some tapes at school, and I had some
Yes.
success with that. I
Yeah.
also would do like some remixing stuff
Okay.
of actual songs, and just put them on blank cassettes, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, and try to sell those at school. And had to varying degrees of success. And then I got an internship at a radio station.
Ah, super
Yeah,
cool, man.
yeah, yeah, for a
Super
couple
cool.
years. And it was a community radio station, so it wasn't like, like Z Kiss, whatever. It
Yeah.
was like folk music, it was like
Yeah.
90% of it. But I had access to their recording studios.
That's right.
So that was really cool to have that kind of quality at that
Yeah.
age,
Yeah.
and getting to used to the mixing board, and all that stuff. So that was really cool. And I ended up making a whole album
Eh,
over the 2 years, like 2 summers that I interned there. So
yeah.
that was really cool, and made what I thought was a cool album. And they would play some of my songs on the air. So I tell my buddies like, hey, make sure you listen to, WERU, and they're going to be playing my song at 3 or something, and so
Yeah.
it was fun.
And our timing is pretty similar in terms of when we both started making music. And so
Okay.
what's kind of cool was like the internet was just starting to boom,
Yeah.
and a lot of your music, like I mean, hey, you're from the US, I'm from the US, but I learned about you from DJ Bizkid out of
Oh, nice.
Germany. Yeah. So
Love
it's
this kid.
crazy, man. And so yeah, I thought it was a good time, man. And your music was all over the world. And so, and how did that happen? You start posting your music online, and
Yeah,
how,
yeah. I connected with some local heads like Brzezowski,
okay.
Moshe, JD Walker, and JD
Yep.
Walker was a part of the Anticon crew when they were
Right.
local to Maine before they went out west, and he was still doing songs with them, and he would appear on some albums here and there, and
Yeah.
he was good homies with Soul and Alias, rest in
Okay.
peace, and so I was hooking up with those guys, and I also was getting pretty savvy at using the internet.
Okay.
I had a pretty cool job at the time. I was working at a quasi TV station. It wasn't like
Okay.
local television. It was programs that were made for ski resorts
Oh
across
wow.
the country,
Yeah.
and I was like their DVD duplicator before like DVDs were really a thing. It was
Yeah.
called
Yeah.
DVD
Sure.
DVD RAM, and it kind of looked like a big floppy disk, but there was a DVD inside. Anyway, so I had access to all this technology, and a lot of my job was like pushing a button and then waiting for 2 hours, for
Okay.
something to get done.
Yeah.
So I would be on AIM, talking to people and connecting
Yeah.
with people and posting stuff on yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
posting stuff on message boards,
Yeah.
so I became virtual homies with the Mole, Jonah Motion, who was over in Hawaii at the time. I think he's in California now, but
Oh man.
and and he was really cool and instrumental in me putting an album together and him wanting to put it out, because I was making pretty eclectic stuff. I mean, I still do,
Yeah. I
but
agree.
but he was into it, and so he kind
Yeah.
of gave me a platform where it had his record label,
Yeah.
associated with it, which was really cool. And he did a lot of the mixing or mastering on it for me, which was cool. So
Yeah. And
that
you
was
you
that was kind
often,
of the early days.
yeah, I'm sorry. And you
No,
you
no.
often got tied to the Anticon group too, right? I
Yeah,
saw that. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
And but I never worked with them. I
Right.
think I've only met Tim Soul like twice,
Mhm.
and and which is it's funny for somebody like me to say, because we're like both from Maine and he's
That's
back
right.
in Maine now. You know what I mean? So to only have met him a couple of times and to meet Alias just a couple of times through JD Walker and stuff,
Yeah.
was really cool for me from a fan point of view, but like I never worked with them creatively or
Right.
anything, although I would have loved to.
Yeah.
I just wasn't at that level,
I see.
during that time yet, at least in my opinion. But,
Yeah. And so how was the main scene in general? I know it was probably hip hop or rap wasn't quite flourish in those parts at the time, but where were you getting your music from? Were you getting it from the MTV, or where was your
well,
access coming from?
it was actually pretty poppin', man.
Okay.
At
Oh,
least
okay.
during my peak active times, it was actually really popping, and it was really popping in southern Maine. There was definitely some stuff going on in central Maine and Lewiston area and in the Bangor area, but in Portland and southern Maine, it was really popping. And it
Okay.
was people like Brzezowski and JD
Okay.
Walker and me. We were doing shows locally
Oh man.
every weekend, so
Oh, so cool.
yeah, and we would have buddies that would have DJ nights, certain nights a week at different venues.
Yeah.
And, once a month or twice a month, they would do an open mic, or they would just have us there for shows.
Yep.
And so it was really cool to be able to have access to like 5 or 6 or 7 different venues to
That is
do
cool.
something every week at, so it was pretty popping. And we had, sometimes we were performing for 4 people, but other times it was standing room only,
Oh
and
man. That's great.
yeah, and it was just a good time. And you would be surprised at the end of the night when you got your cut of the door. Be like, dang, I guess we did have a lot of people, because like for
That's
me
great.
performing, I would like I wouldn't black out, but performing wise, for me, I just have to be focused because I'm a fucking idiot and I got to remember my lyrics.
Yep.
You know what I
I
mean?
feel you on that.
Yeah. So I can't do a whole lot of ad libbing and stuff because I'm gonna screw myself up and forget lyrics.
Oh man.
So I would be like, I didn't even realize how many people we were standing in front of, at this given point in time. So sometimes I would get door money and I'm like, well, I should have stayed home. And other times I'm like, dang, I can pay like the electric bill. This is cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Hey, you did your time, man, and hey, man. So you're also part of the generation that had to, make your music and then sell the physical copies at shows, and
Yeah. Yeah. CD, I became a pro at printing out CD covers and cutting them so perfectly, with scissors, and you'd make, 25, 50, sometimes
yeah, that's
100 of
right.
them. Yeah. And you put a little piece of scotch tape on the side to make it look like it was sealed. So ridiculous. And hopefully you could get away with charging $5 a piece for them.
Oh
The
man.
first couple of years I was performing, I was giving CDs away. I was
Right,
making,
right, right.
just cheap CDRs because everything was super cheap at the time. So
Yeah,
I was making cheap CDRs and giving them away. But when I started to get them manufactured, people were buying albums. I
yeah,
wasn't selling thousands, but I was selling hundreds, and there
yeah.
were kids down there that were selling, double, triple what I was. And
Right,
it was a good scene. It had a great community. There wasn't um from at least my perspective and my experience, there wasn't a lot of infighting. We were
right.
all just really supporting each other. We'd go to each other's shows even if we weren't performing, that
Yeah,
night. So it was really cool.
yeah. It's crazy. Try finding the Nomar CD on Discogs and see what you'll pay for it now, man. It's got to be quadruple, triple digits to get a hold of those old school CDs, man. And,
you
and
know
it's some. What's that?
well, I have or I had a storage unit for a few years, and I finally got rid of it a few weeks ago and like pulled everything out of it. And I found all these old Nomar CDs, and I was
Oh
like,
my
oh man, this
god.
is badass. This is cool. I mean, a lot of it's cringe, but I was like, oh, I'm glad I have them.
Yeah, for sure. They're great artifacts, man. And
For
at some
sure.
point, you produce music. When was it become a producer out of necessity for beats, or did you have an equal love of becoming a producer too?
I
How
I
did
had
that
an
come?
e I had an equal love. First, I'm a writer first and foremost.
Yep.
Like ever since I was a kid, I was writing like horror fiction,
Yeah.
and so I loved writing. And then that kind of morphed into poetry or my version of poetry, which you don't realize at the time, but it was lyrics. It was
Yeah.
it was songs, and I wanted to obviously put those to music, but I had such a love of the music as well that I wanted to emulate what my heroes were doing.
Yeah.
So it all kind of just came together around the same time.
Okay. Well, hey, man, you go on to produce a lot of great music, man. Paper Bullets in '04, and
Yeah.
Welcome to Fuckland. I really enjoyed from 2009.
Yeah, that's one
And
of my
so,
favorite albums.
yeah. Oh, hey. So let's talk about that one then, man. What was what motivated the title of the album, and I love the title track too that's on there. But what were you thinking when you put that album?
There was a movie that came out, and it was called Fuckland.
Okay.
And it was, I think they call it guerrilla filmmaking or something. I don't quote me on that, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was
Of
something
course.
like that. And it was this group of filmmakers, and they had put hidden cameras on themselves, and they went into this area. And I can't remember like if it was like Bosnia or something, but it was something where they weren't going to get permission to like film. So they had all these hidden cameras on them, and they had made a movie. It was kind of like found footage mixed with documentary. It was really interesting, but it was like a factual movie though, from what I remember, and it was called
Yeah.
Fuckland. And I'm also a huge lover of movies, and it was very inspiring, and I thought it was very cool that they did this guerrilla filmmaking because it was anything for the art, like they
Okay.
wanted to tell this story. And I just really appreciated that. So it was kind of like a tribute to that to that movie,
Yeah.
calling it Welcome to Fuckland.
Oh,
And
that song was
I was
great.
trying to, thanks, man. And I was trying to just be as hard as possible as a kid from Maine can, and not in a gangsta sense, but in
Right.
a, like, I'm over it all.
Yeah.
Like, fuck everything,
Yeah.
like, I'm poor. I don't have insurance. Everything sucks. My car sucks. Like, fuck all this. And I'm still going to make it.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that message, Steve. Welcome to your fuckland. Welcome to your pain. I was just like, man, and yeah, it's good music that I work out to.
Nice.
And it's a great track, man. And just hit after hit, man. You're always, and I love that you're busybody, man. You still, your catalog is very consistent, and I love also what you do too is like you create a soundtrack for the book that you released too as
Yeah.
well. So what
Yeah.
kind of like motivated that too to go 360 in terms of
I
doing the
know.
soundtrack for that?
I just love music so much. And it took like transitioning to like being an author. It, I, like, I didn't know what I'm doing. I still kind of don't, but like, I definitely didn't know what I was doing at the beginning. And and music started to take a back seat to it all. And
Sure.
I didn't like that. And I was like, how can I incorporate music back into this? I'm done writing, the manuscript's done, the publisher has it. What can I do now? And I was like, a soundtrack for the book. That
That
would
is
be
cool.
cool. And I enjoy making songs about UFOs and the paranormal. So
Yeah.
it all kind of seemed to fit together.
Yeah, especially there's one beat that you did. It was the Nomar Slevik does not exist intro
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
sound. Oh, that was super cool, man. I
yeah.
was like,
Nice.
man, yeah, and yeah, as equally dope as you are as a lyricist, man, you're an amazing producer. And so, do you find yourself still producing for other people these days, or
Very little. I'll do an off track here or there, and it's usually just an old school buddy, and they'd be
yep,
like, "You want to get on this?" And I'm like, "I have to." Like your family, like I have to. And
yeah,
so, that's like Hob Sputnik, or like if Brzezowski ever asked me to do anything, or if Id Obelus ever asked me to do anything, like I'm always down.
yeah,
And Id and I and a couple other guys, we had a group way back in the day, like 10, 15 years ago, called
yeah.
Done, Done.
Okay,
We did an album, and Milled Pavements digital offshoot put that album out for us, and we also made some CDs. but
yeah,
but it was just a one-off we did, and it was me and Id in the US, and then it was a kid named Slap in Germany, and it
okay,
was a kid named Nebula, and I believe he's in South America, but I forget exactly
oh
where
wow,
he, Brazil maybe, I forget.
yeah,
And if you're watching this, I apologize, homie. But anyways, we started all talking again just last year, and was like,
oh
hey,
man,
let's make a new album.
what?
Yeah. So and we're all busy in our lives doing our own thing, so whenever we can, we'll get a beat from Nebula, and we'll try to throw our rhymes on it whenever we can, and we send all the tracks, all the vocals
Yeah,
to mix. And I think we have like 3 or 4 songs done right now. So we,
oh
at some point, maybe this year or next year, we'll have enough to, put out something new. But it's, so there's always that passion for it. It's finding the time now.
yeah. You're absolutely right. And when did that come in your timeline? Did you start producing beats a couple years after becoming an MC? Was it simultaneous
I
or
would
10
say,
years later?
no, I would say it was a couple of years, and only
Okay.
because it's easy and cheap to write. You
Yep.
need a notebook and a pencil. To make beats, it's a little bit more involved.
Yeah.
And I remember really, really getting into it. And I was talking to my dad about it. And I think my birthday or Christmas was coming up. And I talked to him about this keyboard that I
Oh
wanted.
man.
And it's just a really shitty Casio now. But, at the time,
It was,
it was like
it was
44
awesome.
keys or whatever. Yeah, yeah. And it was, huge and big. And you could, it had a bunch of different sounds on it. And so I think he got me that for my birthday. And then I showed him some what he calls DJ equipment. I showed him some of that from a catalog. And I was like, if I paid for half, could we maybe
Ah,
do something for Christmas or something,
the
And
negotiation. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I got a Gemini sampler.
Oh man.
Yeah. And I also got a turntable. And even the Gemini sampler at the time, I think it was only like 99 bucks or something, like
Yeah, that was a
that's
lot back
not
then, though, man.
it was, but it was still it wasn't like it was $1,000 back
Right,
then.
right. Good
That would
point.
have been
Yep.
nuts. Not like MPC type stuff,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Different league. Yeah.
or the SP 1200, like that I wanted that one forever, but
Oh man.
anyway.
Are you a
But I got
DJ too, or no?
no, no, no.
Okay.
But I got the turntable and I got the Gemini sampler and I had my keyboard. And I
Man.
was like, I was in business, so I was sampling, like my parents had a ton of old country records. So
Oh,
that
fantastic.
all got absconded and, lived in my room at that point because they weren't listening to vinyl anymore. And I had some hip hop vinyl, but it felt weird sampling from hip hop. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So I would try to find stuff on the country records that I could sample, and there are some
There's
fairly
some
good.
good. Yeah, there's
I,
good stuff on it.
yeah. There's definitely some good like melody samples, but I
Yeah.
was surprised at some of the drum tracks. A lot of songs will start with just the drum track, and then like a fiddle or something will come in. But to
Ah.
be able to get like a clean kick or get a clean snare or
Uh,
something, like it was easier than I thought.
yeah.
And I remember the Gemini was very intuitive. It was very simple. There was like two buttons,
Yeah.
and it was it really helped to get my timing down.
Wow.
And so I basically learned my timing on a Gemini.
Was that
And
was late '90s then when that happened?
oh geez, yeah, that was
That didn't.
probably 90 95
Oh
maybe.
yeah, so that was way before Fruity Loops and
Oh yeah.
Acid
I
Pro.
didn't have
Oh man.
any of that for quite a while.
Yeah. What are you using now?
Dude, I'm still running Acid and SoundForge.
Dude.
I I have a hard time spending money on things.
Yeah.
I'm an author. I'm the quintessential struggling writer. I went from one vocation that's really tough to another one that's really tough to make money, so uh I'm sticking with what I know, and which isn't going to cost me anything because I get upgrades, but
Yeah.
I'm not spending the like a subscription per month to
Yeah.
have it. And I didn't have to buy the programs outright when it happened. They were given to me by homies,
Right.
over time.
Right.
And
Yeah. And
so
you're a pro at it too. I mean, you're. I mean, you know how to use it in and out. So
yeah. So it's really great for podcasts too, because I can do tons of layering. Like when I do my podcast,
yeah.
it's not it's more like it's a storytelling podcast, so it's way overproduced and it's got a soundtrack and some sound effects and all that stuff. So I try
Yeah.
to make it engaging, just like the music. But yeah, Soundforge and Acid's what I'm using, man.
Bro, you won't believe it. I still use Co-Edit Pro too, man.
Nice, nice.
I don't know if you're familiar with that program,
I
but
am. I
yeah, I
had it
still.
for a bunch of years. Yeah.
So, man, that's super cool, man. And I love how you're still doing music. And I'm just curious. I always like to ask people who have done music for over 20 years, man, the motivation, the inspiration. What still inspires you to do music, man?
I don't know. Maybe you can help me articulate it, but when you're, I guess, like a creative person, or you're a creative, it just you have to do something that's got to come out of you.
Yeah,
And it's either writing, or it's in my research, or I'm doing something visual, or I'm doing something with audio, but it has to happen. And it
yeah,
has to happen almost every day. And if it doesn't, something's off, something doesn't feel right. And I'm somebody that struggles with anxiety and depression, and even sometimes like suicidal ideation.
yeah,
And to be able to have an outlet on something that I can put myself into 100%
yeah.
has been really like a blessing. And I've been able to
Sure.
do that since I was like 12 years old.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that has kept me going all these years.
Oh man.
So the arts is something that's just near and dear to my heart, and it has to happen. So what's the inspiration? I honestly don't know. Just everything around me all the time.
Yeah.
Like I see a landscape and I got to stop and I got to take a picture, or I hear
Yeah.
something, I'm like, fuck, I got to sample that. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah, and I love that you've done it consistently. I mean, there's breaks in between the times that you've done music, but man, overall, man, you've stuck with it, man. I regret, a lot of times that I took a break. Yeah, I took like maybe an eight, probably almost even 10 years break in doing music,
Oh
man.
wow.
And I regret doing that, man. And I
Yeah.
just I don't even know how I took a break so long, man. So I love that you stuck with it, man. I share the same feeling with you, man. That music has saved my life, and just
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it helps me take a break from like what reality is, man. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You know, like I you just you don't have to think about it or
yeah,
anything, and it makes me feel good, even if
yeah,
what I create might not be what somebody is interested in. That's okay because
sure,
it helped me. But I do love putting it out there for people. You know,
yeah,
I definitely don't make art just for me. I definitely do it to put it out there. You know, I'm
yeah,
still trying to make a living at it, and sometimes I'm successful and sometimes not. I put
yeah,
out a book in 2021,
yeah,
and it bombed. You know, and that was awful. And I didn't really know what to do after that book bombed. And but I, you know, I kind of reeled my shit in together and got it together and did something else. But
yeah,
you know, it's tough when you have setbacks like that, but you learn from them,
yeah,
and
sure.
you know, and you hopefully you keep going.
Yeah, and so that's probably a good segue to talk about it, man. You're an author, and you've got a number of books that you've written. I
Yeah.
see most recently that you're celebrating the 10th anniversary of UFOs over Maine. And
Yeah.
so when was that jump, man? That I mean, it was prior to that, but when was the jump to becoming, an author? This is what I want to do. I want to write.
Yeah, you know, it was I had put out one of my latest albums. It was called The Sound, and it was like an
Yep.
EP. It was, you know, like 6, 7, 8 songs.
Yes,
And
2016.
yeah, yeah, okay. And I was working on the music for that.
Okay.
And you know how it is with music. You can work on stuff 5, 6, 7, 8 years ahead of
Yeah.
time before it comes out, you know.
True.
So I had been working on that particular album for quite a while. And running parallel to it is always my love for all things strange and paranormal and UFO and all that
Okay.
stuff. And I had been collecting all these stories for years since I
Yeah.
was like in high school and before high school, collecting stories of the strange stuff, especially in my home state.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really wanted to do something with it. And I was looking at my bookshelf, and I had a bookshelf of a bunch of local books, and all of them were about ghosts in Maine. There's 100 books about ghosts in Maine,
Yeah.
but there wasn't one book dedicated solely to UFOs in Maine.
Okay.
Some books had some stories, but it wasn't a whole book dedicated to it. So I got the bright idea that I was going to write that book.
Oh wow.
And it took me about 6 years, which is
Oh man.
crazy. But I've, you know, long story short, at the end of 6 years, I had something that resembled a manuscript.
Wow.
So then I went to Google and I was like, how do I submit this? You know, what are publishers looking for,
Oh
and who
wow.
do I even submit it to?
Right.
And so I did find that there are some processes and things that publishers look for in getting a submission, and I'm glad I looked that up because I had to change a lot of what I was doing. And I put together, you know, a manuscript which typically has, you know, some chapters, like chapter titles and then sample chapters and
Yeah.
things like that. And then I looked at my bookshelf and I'm like, well, those are all the publishers. All these local books, you know, on ghosts, they might be interested in something about
Yeah.
UFOs, you know, and then the rejections started coming in, and it was, you know, no, no, no. And sometimes people just wouldn't respond.
Respond.
And
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So a year went by, and I was like, I really want to put this out. There's got to be a way I could just put it out myself. I've been putting out my own music for years,
Sure.
you know, so DIY came back into play. And I was like, okay, how can I, you know, I'm not going to be cutting out each book. So there's got to be, you know, a way to do this. And I found that there was this company called Create Space that has since turned into, like, Amazon bought it, of course,
Oh
and it's
wow.
now that turned into Kindle.
Oh man.
But before it was called Create Space, and
Okay.
you could upload your manuscript, and you can make your own cover, like in their online software, and then you can order a copy to see how it looks.
Oh man.
So I ordered a copy. I did all that, and I ordered a copy. The day that copy came in the mail, I got an email from a publisher, and it said, "We're interested in putting out your book."
Oh man.
It was the exact same day. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't write it better myself. And so I'm holding a tangible object in my hand, and I can just hit, you know, submit on Amazon, and it'll be for sale,
Yeah.
or on CreateSpace, sorry, and it'll be
Sure.
for sale. Uh, or I can go with this traditional publisher who wants to sign me to a contract and put out this
That's so
book.
cool.
Yeah, so I had to go with that. I had to see
Yeah.
what that experience was like.
I agree.
And it was an experience, man. First of all, they sent me a contract that was like that thick, and I was like,
Like,
this is a
damn,
lot.
I gotta review it now.
Yeah. So I read through it. I understood half of it. I sent it to my dad, and
Okay,
I think he understood half of it as well.
nice.
And he's like, it doesn't sound like they want to steal from you, but they're definitely not paying you a lot. And I was
Yeah.
like, are they going to put out my book? Yes. Is it going to be
Okay.
available in a lot of places? Yes.
Oh,
Sign, sent.
wow.
And it's pennies on the dollar, but it's a learning experience. And I got to work with a really great editor who was working with a green author, and so she helped me a lot to understand how to really accentuate my voice and not
Yeah.
just read like a textbook,
Okay.
or whatever. So that was really cool and just a great experience. And it
Nice.
was really, when it finally came out, which was 2014, when it
Right.
finally came out, you could walk into a Walmart or a Target or something and see my book. Like in New
So,
England, not everywhere, but in New
yeah.
England you could. And that was badass, and so it was time. Some time went by, and that was great and all that good stuff. It's not like I could quit my job or anything, but I wanted to write another book, and I wanted
Nice.
to write a part two. And my publisher wasn't interested in that, and they ended up dropping me.
Okay.
And now I'm back to square one. I don't have a publisher anymore, but I have all these new stories. And then I had to start submitting to other publishers.
Yeah.
And then I found another one that was interested in putting it out.
Nice.
But they didn't want to call it UFOs Over Maine Part Two because another
Ah.
publisher had put that out.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they wanted to call it Otherworldly Encounters, because mine was
Okay.
called UFOs Over Maine Part Two, Otherworldly Encounters. And they're like, let's take your subtitle, we'll make that the title, and then we'll come up with another subtitle for you. Anyway, so that came out in 2018, and that was fun and good, and an even bigger publisher, and that was really fun and
Nice.
interesting. And I got to have a publicist during that. So like I was on like on Sirius Radio and like
How
just a
cool.
ton of different stuff where they were just like, hey, Ancient Aliens wants to have you on. And I mean, Ancient Aliens, like I'm all set with them. So I was like, pass. But it was cool that there was somebody that was doing stuff like that,
Yeah.
for me, and I didn't have to pay them. That was, that was really cool.
Yeah.
But again, the contract was pennies on the dollar. It was a little bit
Sure.
more than the previous publisher, but it wasn't that much more. So, anyways, fast forward all past that, and now it is 2022. And I've written like 3 other books since then, and it's
Sure.
all been self-published because I'm out of the traditional publisher thing,
Okay.
because you just can't make money on it. Self-publishing, you can make money. So in 2022, I was like, oh, UFOs Over Maine is going to be 10 years old in 2 years. Let me read UFOs Over Maine, and maybe I can just re-release that in 2024. So I read it. If you look at any of your work, maybe 8-10 years ago, maybe it's cringe. Mine shit is,
I feel you.
So I'm like, no, I can't just re-release this book.
Yeah.
So I completely dismantled it and I rewrote it completely.
Oh man.
And yeah, so I re-interviewed witnesses. I found more information because I'd become a better researcher and an
Right.
investigator over the years. So
That's a good point.
I was trying to put those skills to the test. And the original book had maybe 20 or 30 stories in it. I added about 150 more stories
Oh
to the new
man.
book. So the old book was about 130 pages. This new one is over 400.
Oh shoot.
And half of it is never before published stuff. So this is like the book that I wanted to write,
Yeah.
as like my first book, but I didn't know, and I didn't have the experience to be able to
Yeah.
do that then, but I was able to do it now. So it's in my opinion, it's the definitive work on extraterrestrials in the state of Maine.
Oh
And
man, I gotta cop that and support and read that, man. That sounds
well,
really cool.
I appreciate that. And you don't have to be from Maine to appreciate it.
Yeah.
These are stories from real people, and you don't have to believe everything,
Yeah.
but these people believe it.
That's
And
right. Their
yeah,
experiences.
yeah, it's their experience, and it's not for me to poo-poo it or in any way. In fact, a lot of people don't like to talk about it. And beyond that,
Yeah.
these phenomenon can really fuck people up.
Oh man.
There's a lot of trauma that happens from this, and
I believe it.
people who have these experiences, they suffer from anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation. Well, guess what?
Sure.
I do too. But extraterrestrials wasn't my catalyst, but
The
it was for
reason, yeah.
you, but we can connect on
Yeah.
those traumas, and I can be a non-judgmental ear for these people.
Sure.
And
Exactly.
yeah, and it's showing them kindness, and being non-judgmental, and trying to share these stories, A, as historical record, and B,
Yeah.
maybe somebody who can't come forward, doesn't feel like they can come forward,
Yeah.
will read these and not feel alone, you know.
Yeah. Because they get that feeling that, like, oh man, like if I tell the story, they may think I'm crazy, but it happened to them, man. And so
Right, right.
there's no way around it, man. So that's awesome that you got
Yeah,
that and you provided them with a platform to do so.
yeah.
And so is your fascination or your interest only in UFOs, or are you also
No.
interested in ghosts and supernatural things like that too as
Yeah,
well?
I all of it fascinates me. For
Okay.
some reason, I've really latched on to UFOs, and it's really
Okay.
because of like an encounter I had at like 4 years old.
Oh wow, wicked.
And throughout the years, I've had like 12 UFO sightings. And when I say UFO, it's, it's become synonymous with extraterrestrial, but I'm just
Okay.
saying it was an unidentified flying object.
Okay.
And it's a big reason why it was changed to UAP, to get that extraterrestrial piece out of it,
Yeah.
to get that relation away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was curious too, because yeah, Filipinos, man, we believe in ghosts, and we have all sorts of stories too as
Sure.
well. And so I didn't know if I was like, I wonder if it's just that, or but yeah, no, I find that fascinating too, man. And so yeah, and so you said the book though focuses mostly on encounters and stories in Maine. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
yeah.
Wow.
Like, there's so much is happening in this state that I don't need to step out of my backyard yet. I did a
Wow.
few years ago in 2020, I did. And I wrote a book about a guy who's from New Hampshire. So it was still New England, but it
Yep.
wasn't Maine. And I wrote a book about a guy in New Hampshire. But there's so much happening in my own backyard that I can continue to write about it.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a problem. My next project is going to be New England as opposed to just Maine. uh but yeah, if it's happening in my backyard, there's plenty to write about.
Yeah.
There's this area in Maine, and I coined the term the Somerset Triangle.
Okay. Wow.
And it's this, like, it's 890 square miles or something. I forget the actual number now, but it's this area in Maine where over 3,000 sightings have occurred,
Oh
like,
wow.
just in this area. And like, you could write a whole book just on that, and that's just one chapter in the book.
Yeah.
So there's just so much happening, and I even have some werewolf stories, Men in Black
Oh
stories.
damn, that's
uh,
crazy.
yeah, people that have interacted with extraterrestrial beings, abduction stories. So it's not just lights in the sky, it's runs the
Yeah,
gamut of a ton of weird stuff.
man. Yeah, have you found that as you get deeper into your study of this kind of stuff, have the sightings increased? I mean, the technology is more advanced too, as well, and people aren't afraid to come out, and you can do it from the comfort of your home and not reveal your identity. Have you
Yeah.
noticed that the sightings have increased nowadays?
I wouldn't say these have increased. I think the sightings have remained very consistent. It's just
Okay.
more people are more comfortable
Visibility.
coming forward. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, they're more comfortable coming forward, which is great. And there are a couple of big reporting agencies for
okay.
UFOs. It's New Fork and MUFON, but
Okay.
that's the cis white older male gender.
Yeah.
um that's involved with all of that. So,
Yep.
like, Gen Z is not going there to report their stuff. They're going to social media.
Oh, sure.
So I get a ton of people coming to me on social media reporting their stuff. And
Oh, wow.
so some of them, like MUFON, noticed a drop in reportings, and they put out a statement at some point over the years that UFO sightings have gone down, but they haven't. You sightings being reported to you have gone down, but
Yeah.
people are talking about it everywhere else.
Different platform. Ah, I got you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it's interesting how it's transforming. And I
Yeah.
can't say my fingers on the pulse, but I'm, as a 46-year-old man, my fingers on the pulse as much as possible,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and
to
it's
just try
wild. You
and stay on
mentioned
top.
3,000 sightings in Maine. I don't know what the period is for that, but are there any other certain parts of the world that get quite high volumes of UFO
Yeah,
sightings?
Yeah,
What?
there's a lot of areas. New York, like upstate New York, is a hotbed. Parts of California, and even
Okay.
like Southern California, which I know it's so populated, but
Yeah.
tons of sightings over there. But Northern California, even more sightings, and a lot of
Wow.
stranger stuff gets reported. Obviously, Nevada, Area 51,
Yeah.
that's been in the news forever. But yeah, there's hotspots all over the United States, but
Man, that's wild.
it really comes down to paying attention, and
Yeah.
I look up more than most, so I see a lot of stuff, so if you start paying attention, you're going to see stuff that doesn't make sense.
Man. Yeah, and so and I love that you're very involved in that scene too, and you're always on podcast, and you have
Yeah,
your own podcast. I think it's I Want to Believe is the name of the podcast, right? And you're a couple seasons into it now, and so yeah, man, the community is large, man, and I love you just getting out there, sharing the knowledge that you have, and are you learning new stuff from other guys that you interact with too as well,
oh
or
yeah,
okay,
absolutely. Like, I want this to be a continuous learning
yeah,
journey, you know what I mean? Like, because people in this field, and when I say this field, I mean the paranormal,
yeah,
it's interesting. You have to be like open-minded to believe this stuff or to
yeah,
be
yeah,
into
sure,
it, but they can be very closed-minded personal individuals, where there's maybe some racism or misogyny or, some stuff that's not cool, and,
yeah,
a thing that I don't support. And it's really interesting that these types of people kind of are a magnet to, or this field's a magnet to them, to come to this field. So what hopefully what I can bring when I'm on podcasts, and to be able to say I support PC and LGBTQIA and all that stuff, is to show that that's okay. You don't have to be so close-minded. Not, like,
right,
it's not just white people, into strange things. There's a lot of people that are
yeah,
experiencing this stuff, and you can't alienate people,
sure.
and a lot of that's happening, and it's something I don't want to be a part of that. So I want to continue to learn and grow, and if I'm doing that, hopefully peers will see that and they will do it as well. And that's not just me. There's lots of other researchers that are doing the exact same thing that I am, so
Yeah. Yeah, I love I just love you in general in terms of being a creative and stuff and you do music, produce, new podcast, man, you do it all, man. And I just love that you're still getting out there and doing that stuff, man. And
I appreciate
it's
it, man.
great, man. Yeah, it's really awesome thing, man. And what do you have planned in the future, man? Any and you mentioned that the group album that might come in a couple years. Any other big boulders that are on your timeline?
Yeah, I think there's a few. So I'm in season 7 of my podcast,
Yep, that's right.
and I'd like to do 10. And then after 10, I think I want to transition to another kind of podcast.
Okay.
Do something, maybe something with my girlfriend, because my girlfriend and I are really into this stuff together.
Okay.
So it'd be fun for her and I to do something together
Yeah.
with that. I also continue to have books planned. There's like, 7 or 8 that are in my head that are planned.
Nice.
But the most recent ones that I'm going to start working on very soon, because this UFOs over Maine book just came out.
Yep.
So the stuff I'm going to work on next is about creatures and humanoid creatures. And there's hundreds of stories, so I'm excited to get
Man,
into that.
cool.
And then my girlfriend and I want to put together this alternative travel guide to the area that we live in. So it's stuff that's off the beaten path, and stuff that's, alternative and doesn't cost a whole lot of money, and or
Yeah.
no money at all, where you can come to Maine and you don't have to just do the touristy stuff. There's a bunch of other fun
Yeah.
stuff you can
Oh,
do,
dude, I see a lot. Yeah. Oh man, that sounds really cool.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we're excited to get started on that, over the next couple years. So those are 2 big boulders there. And then, yeah, I want to keep creating audio, and that's going to be in podcasts, it's going to be in music, and I do some of the soundscapes in my podcast as well, to
Okay.
kind of, keep the creative juices flowing, music wise. So that's always fun to do. But when I can get on the mic and I'm with a homie, like Hobbs Sputnik, or Hobbs Stay Busy, as he's known now,
Yeah,
or
that's right.
anything
I
else.
heard you reference his old name. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He was like, It's Stay Busy now, man," like on Insta or something. I'm like, "Shit, I'm sorry, dude, I'm sorry." That's my bad. That's my bad. But yeah, Hobbs is doing great stuff over in
Yeah.
Canada, and geez, the new Noah 23 stuff that, his. he's putting on a ton of really interesting stuff right now. And it's like, I mean, that's somebody whose career has been insane as far as
Yeah.
consistency goes. But anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's exciting, man. Well, I love it, man. I appreciate you sharing your story music wise and the work that you do with your books. And so I usually like to close the interview out with just some fun, lighthearted questions.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's definitely an honor, man, to go and I'm honored to have the opportunity to share your story too as well. So
Oh,
it's
I
been great,
appreciate it.
man. I'm glad that it's kind of full circle where I've known about you so long and loved your music.
Yeah. And same here.
Yeah.
It's mutual. And your new
Yeah.
stuff is so good.
Oh
I'm
man, thank you, man.
yeah, so impressed with it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And likewise, man. So just man, it's awesome, man. I love what you're doing, man, and just the work you do motivates me, man. I love that,
Uh,
man.
I
But
appreciate it.
but hey, man, here's some final questions, man. Let's see how you answer them, man. So hey, paranormal researcher, man, and you're fond of all things related to that, man. What is your favorite alien movie? Do any of them get it right?
I don't know if any of them get it right.
Yeah,
Like I'm not a major experiencer like that. I've only seen stuff in the sky.
yeah.
Uh, but there are a few that I really really like, and one just came out and it's available on Hulu, and
Oh,
it's called No One Can Save You.
oh, man.
And it is amazing. There might be two words spoken in the entire movie, but it's really creepy and it's really well done. And the main actress who's in it is amazing. And the aliens in this movie are absolutely spectacular.
Oh,
So
wow.
I would definitely recommend that. And then some oldies but goodies is Fire in the Sky,
Yep.
Dark Skies.
Yeah.
Dark Skies is great, and The Fourth Kind I think is fantastic.
Oh, okay. I don't know that one. That one.
Mila Jovovich. I'm not
Oh,
sure how to say
yeah.
her
She's
name.
quite famous. Yeah.
Yeah, she's in that, and it's kind of like half movie and half found footage, and it's done really well. So I definitely recommend that. Fourth Kind.
All right, man. Hey, I love to eat, man. What is your favorite kind of food?
Oh boy, some of my go tos, if it's just being a super fat day, is spaghetti and meatballs, and I'll just shove it
Oh,
in my
that
face.
sounds really good right now.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, man. Hey, what is your favorite slang word from Maine?
Oh man, favorite slang word from Maine.
Something maybe just unique to your
Man,
state.
that's a good question. Put on the spot. I'm having like I know no words now for some reason. All I can think of is like up north, you know. But a lot of people think like we're Canada and we're not, you know. uh, so there's that. But there is a word that I guess Mainers do say, but it's more of a stereotype, and it's aya, a
Oh.
ayuh, aya. And that's just to mean like yes, or it can mean a bunch of different things, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But it's basically like I agree with you, or yes,
Ah, I
or I'm
gotcha.
acknowledging you. Like, did you hear me? Aya, you know.
I'm
So
not familiar.
that's
That's
something
pretty cool.
that we're known for. And I don't have a Mainer accent, so I can't even I can't even say it in a Mainer voice, you know. But Stephen King is huge in our state,
Yeah,
and
he's from there,
he
right?
yeah, he's from
Okay.
the Bangor, Maine area,
Yeah.
and there is a book he wrote called Pet Cemetery,
Yeah. Oh
and
man.
yeah, great book, even better movie. And there's a line in there, and it's sometimes dead is better. And I say that's like the one thing I can say as a Mainer, and it's sometimes dead is better. So
Oh
that's
my
like the
god.
one Mainer thing I can say.
Man, super cool. Hey, I was not familiar with that term, so thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
All right, man. Hey, if you could have dinner with anyone from past or present, dead or alive, who would it be? I know,
I
on the
got
spot question,
yeah,
man.
no, I think I gotta go with the homie iced tea. Like
Oh,
there's
I
so
love
many
it.
times as a teenager, and even to this day, I just talked to my girlfriend about this. This is crazy you're asking this. Like sometimes I just wonder what he's doing. Like it's 7 p.m. and he's in, Cali, and he's chilling, and he's got Coco with him or whatever.
Yeah.
And like what the hell is he doing? Like our lives are just so completely different. And I just
Right.
I just want to know what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like, is he listening to beats? Like, he just put out like this, like
I,
three record album or something,
yeah,
and one of the
dude.
songs like went hard, dude.
Oh, I haven't heard it yet. Really?
Oh, so good, so good. I'm sure if you just type it on YouTube, you can find it. But
Yeah.
I came across it on his Instagram, a month or so ago, and it went hard, man. Like, he is somebody. It's interesting. He's kind of like a parallel to Stephen King, because they're both old timers now,
Yep.
and they're both still extremely active,
Yeah.
and they continue to evolve and
Oh my
evolve
God.
with the times. And Ice-T continues to change his flow, and it's not to be like everybody else, but it's evolving,
Oh, that's
you know
crazy.
and still evolving in the Ice-T way, not in what everybody's doing now these days. And
Right.
Stephen King continues to evolve, and anytime there's a new platform out, like, he was the first big name author to have an exclusive story on Kindle when Kindle first launched. And
Oh
everybody's
wow.
like, fuck Kindle, what the fuck? And Stephen King embraced it.
Yeah.
And now Scribd is becoming like the new Kindle thing. And sure enough, Stephen King is on the pulse of that and has an exclusive story on Scribd right now, which is interesting.
Oh man.
Interesting parallel for these two old timers in completely unrelated but also related creative fields.
Yeah, and yeah, that would make for an interesting dinner, especially with iced tea and cocoa at the same time, man. Hey,
Yeah.
they're just a fun couple, man. So yeah. All right, man. Well, good, man. You talked about the special projects that you got. Again, it was an honor just to do this deep dive with you, man. And I really appreciate your time on the weekend. I know it's almost over, but hey, this is I'm into your personal time. So thank you so much, man.
Yeah, I
Wait to
really
share this
appreciate it.
interview, man. Yeah. Any final words before we close the session out?
Man, just kindness. It's not hard. Just show kindness to people. We're all having a
Amen.
real hard time right now. So kindness is what I preach.
My man, ladies and gentlemen, Nomar Slevik, thank you again, man. I can't wait. I'll keep in touch as we put this thing out.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much. And again, your new stuff is great. So everybody check out Memphis Reigns. It's good
Uh,
stuff. Please.